TikTok, the ban is coming, or is the TikTok ban really coming? What do you think, Roberto?
Who knows?
Hi, everybody. I'm Ian Corzine, your social media lawyer, and welcome to the Social Media Law Podcast. I'm extremely excited to be joined by Roberto Blake, who's taught creative entrepreneurship for the past decade on YouTube and the other social media platforms. Roberto, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Ian. It's good to see you. You're looking good.
Oh, well, thank you. You too. Listen, the reason I brought you on is because in the past 2 or 3 months, you put together a number of TikTok ban-related videos, which have really skyrocketed up the YouTube charts. And they're really unique because of your insight as far as how it could be an opportunity for creators. And so I thought for my audience, which is mostly creators, it would be great to have you on to explain to us about that opportunity. But before we get there, we got to talk about the basics, which is what is the TikTok ban? How could it be implemented? Why has President Trump decided to institute a TikTok ban? What it means for creators, as I mentioned. And then finally, we'll end today on whether or not the TikTok ban will really happen on September 15th, September 20th, September 21st. It depends on the source. But supposedly later on in September, there will be a TikTok ban. Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about it. I mean, you have a lot of insight into this more than me. You're the lawyer.
Well, listen, we'll just talk about it. And I do want to hear about what you think creators should do if there is a TikTok ban.
Yeah.
But before we get there, let's go to some background. You know, in your own understanding, what is the TikTok ban really?
So from my perspective, and I'm seeing a lot of this happening in other countries, we already know that it's been banned in India. We know here in the United States, no member of the United States military or serving in public office is allowed to use the app. So a TikTok ban in the US actually already is in place. It's a limited ban, and it's limited to government employees and government officials. Mm-hmm. We already know there's a nationwide ban of TikTok in India. And we know that I believe Parliament in the UK has limited it.
Yes,
and has put restrictions in place.
Mm-hmm.
They are somewhat moving forward with a ban. We'll see if they do something in response to following the US's lead or if they do the initiative on their own. Mm-hmm. And Parliament in Australia, I believe, is already writing legislation that would allow for a ban because of how they operate. They have to basically, from what I read, rewrite their legislation to even allow them to ban it because it's considered a communications platform. And so that is something, when I look at what's happening globally with that, what I guess people are referring to as the Cold War with the United States and China right now. And when you look at the exchange with regard to how the economy has been affected by things like, you look at tariffs, you look at our rough and tumble relationship with our overseas partners in China and how it's affected the tech industry specifically with regard to that. It's not unreasonable to think that this could happen, especially since the current administration has been very adamant about it.
Yes, it's really true. And what's amazing about this, and you highlighted this in your second video, 80 million American users of TikTok. In a country of 330 or so million people, that's a lot of people that may be adversely affected by this TikTok ban. And we're not just talking about TikTok creators, we're talking about people who just are entertained by the platform, which probably is the majority. So this potential ban that could take place in America, and it's taking place across the world, really could have a major impact, right?
It can, and it treads into, a lot of people in social media are very quick to talk about the concept of censorship.
Yes.
And then you and I have talked about the nature of private companies having the prerogative to dictate what happens within the usage of their resources, their materials, their platforms. A venue can tell you how to behave if you decide to be physically taking up space in that venue. They have that right. Same way somebody walks into your house, you can tell them, hey, you don't like the rules, you can leave. But in this instance, it's a government entity restricting and limiting the use of a communications tool that 80 million Americans said yes to and have not since abandoned on their own, despite concerns about privacy or security. They've still said, well, I'm willing to take that chance, or I still say it's worth it, or I don't care. And that's a choice that an American gets to make. So I feel like when we talk about freedom of speech, freedom of expression, we're very critical of the social media platforms. And I haven't seen that same criticism applied to the government, an entity that we actually should be concerned with when it comes to the concept of censorship.
I totally agree. I think you're getting into the concept which us lawyers talk about as far as equal protection under the laws.
I think it sets a scary precedent in terms of social media, in terms of regulation. And as somebody is an industry insider, and I look at, people have said in the past when they criticize platforms who create their own restrictions, they say, well, it's a slippery slope, quote unquote, which is a logical fallacy. But the real answer and the right question that they do ask, though, is, well, where does it end? Where's the line? If the president of the United States or any other world leader can just decide to ban the usage of a communications platform that tens of millions of citizens have opted into and utilize, and that is actually, benefiting many businesses, individual people's personal brands, their small business owners. I feel that that is wrong. And generally speaking, people tend to agree with this president, typically are anti-regulation, or at least would like less regulation or less government intervention. And you know me, I'm a very adamant capitalist. I consider myself a human-centric capitalist, though. Yes, like I'm compassionate, but I still believe in capitalism. I still believe it does and gets more right than it does wrong. I believe in small business owners. I believe in a free market economy, and I don't like taking away people's choices. So that's where it's troubling to me. And I brought this up in my video.
Yes.
They haven't disclosed to us proof that the information goes to China and the Chinese Communist Party. They've shown us that the information is recorded and that they're scraping, but it's no more or no less, in many cases less, information than Facebook, Google, Twitter, all of them are collecting.
Yes.
And I understand that the U.S. and the U.S. companies are not the same thing as a Chinese company that may or may not have ties to the Chinese government. But I feel the burden of proof of showing a citizen who's made a choice to use the platform, hey, your information is leaving the country and going to that place. I think the burden of proof is on the government before they take away a choice that you have.
Totally agree with that. And getting into potential evidence of Chinese use of American information, just to kind of set the stage a little bit, the executive orders that were issued by the president on August 6, 2020 pertain to both TikTok and WeChat, which are both mobile apps owned by Chinese companies.
ByteDance and Tencent.
Yeah, and Tencent, yeah, which have a loose affiliate relationship with TikTok and WeChat. I guess the thought with President Trump is he said basically the reason for the executive orders was a national security concern. He was concerned that location data, browsing, search histories, all that information about Americans could be transferred to Chinese companies, and then they could use this information to maybe potentially track Americans, to maybe blackmail Americans. You shouldn't have been at this location, and you're gonna have to pay me to not disclose that. Also, the other thing was interesting is Chinese censorship. Would information about our freedom in America and other countries be blocked in China? The other thought too is that China could pump disinformation into the WeChat or TikTok platforms to adversely affect our political processes. So these are some of the reasons advanced in the executive orders based upon the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. What's really interesting and what you just highlighted upon is imminent danger. You mentioned a burden of proof that there hasn't been some sort of showing to the American public, or anyone for that matter, that Chinese companies are actually receiving information from the use of these apps. I know you're a student of this particular subject. Have you seen anywhere where someone has said, oh, there was a leak, there was some sort of Chinese use of American information derived from TikTok or WeChat?
Not specifically. One of the concerns was also the fact that this went through a presidential executive order.
Yes.
It wasn't passed through Congress, which means that it wasn't done through consensus and through the democratic process. Wait, you had a thought?
Well, I was just going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're exactly right. And, so the audience understands an executive order is basically a written direction by the president to the executive branch. There is no voting. It is literally do this. And so there was no evidence that was brought forward that would justify the executive orders. And what's interesting and it's counterintuitive is you think, as drastic a move as this is, you can no longer use this app. You would think the president would be right out front with the evidence, right? Guys, we've uncovered this horrible leak. This justifies this. And then he wouldn't have the problem he has. Right now, it's kind of like you said, it was a unilateral decision.
He would have overwhelming support for this.
Yes.
If that were the case. And it would be a very smart move on his part to present that evidence and to rally that support. Well, that would be leverage right now. And that would be very good for his brand right now. As a marketer, I'm like, hey, this would be very on brand for Trump. And this would be his, we got him. This would be his, we got him, you know, and that'd be a strong and powerful message for this president. And it would vindicate him in so many ways. I don't think he would hold those cards close to the chest. That doesn't seem the play that he would make, and it wouldn't make sense. So if he had the card to play, he would play it. It would be his trump card. Nice.
You know. Have we forgotten about the market force? One of the things that hasn't been brought up is if there was a leak of American information, if there was some disaster that occurred, don't you think that the American public is smart enough to say, wow, wait a minute, hold on a second. I don't think I'm going to use this app anymore because someone was hurt by it. And I'm not suggesting that we have to wait till someone gets hurt all the time,
yes, but until we have some context on that too. Yeah.
Yeah. But until we have some sort of evidence that there is an adverse effect to people putting, doing dances, doing the WAP dance on TikTok, how can we legislate and put a unilateral law in place to ban TikTok? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me.
When you say, well, if something is harmful, will the American people respond and react? It'll depend on the marketing. It won't depend on the reality. It doesn't depend on the reality. It depends on the marketing.
Which brings us to the reasons why President Trump has decided to ban TikTok. We talked about the potential security concerns. You and I both agree that there isn't much evidence, if any, relating to Chinese use of our personal information derived from these apps. The other thing we didn't touch on, but there's some discussion in the social media about a vendetta that the president has relating to those TikTokers who bought up all his tickets to a campaign event in June. And then very few people showed up to the event. You're an expert at reading between the lines and looking behind what's really going on. Do you have any other suspicions about why President Trump is doing this? You mentioned one, I think, in one of your videos, and it has to do with the China trade war type situation. Do you have any other thoughts on that?
Trump came from the world of business. Correct. His business record is debatable, but he is a brilliant marketer and brand builder. And he is an effective, I wouldn't call him a good orator. I would call him an effective orator. He knows how to play a crowd, and he does very well with his crowds. He knows how to message to his target market. And so all credit in the world to him on that. I think you could analyze him and get a masterclass in marketing.
Yeah, I agree.
Maybe not in business ethics, but
maybe your own TV show on NBC. Yeah.
But one of the worst negotiated deals of all time. He asked for $1 million and got, I believe it was 60,000 an episode or something like that at the time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something like that. He's said himself that he is a counterpuncher and that his father taught him to be vicious and ruthless in not just business, but in all aspects of life. I think that the ban on China of TikTok and WeChat didn't extend specifically to aspects of the gaming industry, which a lot of people noted. And I think I brought this up in my video. I think that he didn't do that because he knew it'd be a bridge too far in alienating too much of his base to do that. I think he was advised to not mess with and not touch gaming. And ironically, I think that in terms of information and in terms of what's collected and stuff like that, that the information tied to gaming and what the Chinese government might be collecting, if you're worried about TikTok, they're gathering as much, if not more information on people based around that. Well,
I'm hearing from you a multitude of different reasoning, but one of them would be marketing for sure. The other thing is punching back really, really hard when there's some sort of threat to him, and then punching back at maybe an easy target, which is, again, I'm generalizing, but a majority, I think, or a lot of TikTok is Gen Z, which he's not getting the votes for anyway, for two reasons. One is they don't probably like him. And then secondarily, a lot of them are younger than 18. So it's kind of an easy target to say, listen, I'm going to take a stand on this culture, this mobile app culture, and punch back. But it's really easy target because he's not going to get their favor anyway. Now, if you went to gamers, like you said, it might be a different story. Well, listen, we've talked about what is the ban, how would it be implemented, if at all. The next step to talk about is, let's say there was ban. Let's imagine for a moment there was a ban. That means that the government outlawed any transaction, with Tencent or ByteDance. How would this affect creators, in your opinion?
It would probably look very similar implementation-wise to India because, one, the new funding mechanism, because TikTok creators are actually paid now. It's similar to YouTube monetization, but it's literally 1/100th of the
it is. It's 80-20, right? I heard it's 80-20.
It's 80-20, but then the CPM is also like 1/100th of the value.
Oh, I see. Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's 3 cents for every 1,000 views.
Oh my goodness.
That's a terrible CPM. That's nothing. But then again, TikTok is easy virality. It's short form content. So it might make sense that that's also true comparative to YouTube.
You make it up in volume.
Yeah. So I think that's, I'm not going to use the word fair as much as the word proportional. So the ban would affected in the same way that is in India. And if you look at India, the app is just not available. People have suggested that, you get around that with a VPN. You don't. It's tied to the SIM. So you don't. I talk to the security people. It's like, no, it's, and I also have friends abroad. Our friends, Dee and Nick Nimmin, they've told me how that works with regard to VPN with that app. So if America doesn't ban TikTok, but a bunch of these other countries do, then you have a different problem. Because now the reach has been nerfed. If 1/3 of the market or 2/3 of the market goes away, then your potential for virality just got cut down to less than half of what it was. Your potential, you end up like Anakin Skywalker losing all your limbs on Mustafar. All your potential. Just
was that the name of the planet that he lost his limbs on? Mustafar?
Yes, Mustafar.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
it's like, make sure for our audience.
Yeah, yeah, it's like you're Anakin Skywalker. It's like don't try it. So if it was banned in enough places, I mean, losing the Indian market is devastating. And people would be like, well, isn't that mostly non-English speaking? Well, a lot of TikToks don't rely on language. So you still lost a large portion by virality. You lost over 1 billion users just so everyone's like, why are my TikTok views down? It's like, you do realize that like 1/6 of the world can't use the app anymore. And like 1/3 of the people online in the world can't use the app anymore.
I have you on the record now, and you've made a number of videos. You've done the research about TikTok, but now knowing what you know now, and knowing that this video and this podcast is coming out shortly before September 15th or the 20th or the 21st, is TikTok really going to get banned? Roberto, what say you?
You should act as if it's a guaranteed certainty, whether it happens or not, because you won't have there's no downside to acting as if it's guaranteed certainty. You can still keep making TikToks, but you should be doing everything else to build your brand. I can't say for certainty it's going to get banned. I think you should act as if it's a certainty, though. I think if there's a 1% chance, you should act as if it's a guaranteed certainty. Batman style, be paranoid as hell. So I would just say you should have an exit strategy and a plan for what if that happens. That's dark. Give me something positive to end on. Jesus.
Well, listen, I'm taking from what you say that it doesn't matter whether or not the ban will really happen. You should act as if it will. I want to put my 2 cents on the record, and I think that there's no way in heck the ban will take place for either WeChat or TikTok. That's my thought, that I don't think it's really going to happen. But you never know. I mean, like you said, in India and other parts of the world, it is happening. So we may see the decline of TikTok based upon these limitations that governments have put upon the app.
If it doesn't happen in the US, you should still be worried about it happening everywhere else, because that's all your reach.
That's your reach. Like you said, 1/3 of the country, or 1/3 of the world, I mean. Well, listen, guys, we've come to the end of the Social Media Law podcast. We're also filming this for YouTube and the other social media platforms. So what I want to ask Roberto to do, which we always do on YouTube, because we have to hand off to the next video. If you want to learn more about the TikTok ban, or TikTok in general for creators and marketers and entrepreneurs. Roberto has done an amazing series on this. And so if Roberto, can I ask you to point up? Roberto, where can the people reach you if they have more questions about creative entrepreneurship, making money online, passive income? I know you're an expert on passive income. What are your links?
So they can find me at Roberto Blake in all social medias. And on YouTube, you can find me at youtube.com/Roberto Blake 2. That is the number 2. And of course, if you ever want to work with me as a content creator, you can sign up over at awesomecreatoracademy.com for coaching or for my membership.
Well, there's a lot out there for, if you're a fan of Roberto and want to learn more about him. Thank you so much, Roberto, for joining us. I thought this was a really awesome conversation. I could do this all day. Thanks for making time for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Ian.
All right. I'm Ian Corzine, the social media lawyer. Thank you so much for joining us on the Social Media Law Podcast. All right. That's enough for today. We'll see you next time.